Before you buy your next house, you need to watch this video. My name is Carmen.
And I'm Darius. And by the end of this video, you'll know whether or not it's a good idea for you to buy your first or next house, regardless of what's going on in the market.
So let's go ahead and just jump into the points. Darius, hit him with point number one.
The first thing is the fact that you need to have stable income before you talk about buying a house.
Did you hear that? He said stable.
Yes, stable income means you have tax returns for about 2 to 3 years of your current employer. Whether you're employed or have a business, you need to have about 2 to 3 years worth of tax returns to show that you have stable income. Reason being, the first thing comes to my mind is the fact that your mortgage is going to continue for the next 15 to 30 years.
That's stable.
Yeah,
that's coming.
Your mortgage is going to be stable. So you need to have a stable income to go along with that mortgage.
And we're sharing this with you because for those of you who work off of commission, or for those of you who are business owners, your income is up and down and can be all over the place. So that may make it challenging for the bank to grant you loans as it pertains to what you could afford, because your income is up and down.
Right.
So get to a sweet spot of where you have at least some sort of consistency going on, at least knowing that you'll have, X amount guaranteed every single month before you decide to get a mortgage.
The next thing you need to think about, or you need to know, is decide what you can afford. This is very, very, very important, because if you go to the bank and ask and they tell you what you can afford, is usually going to be more than what you can afford. And ideally, you want to stay within about 25% of your income, just to make sure that you're able to take care of your other expenses, like your not just your mortgage, but also your transportation and your things that you want, like different debts, like going out and just being human. You don't want to be housebroke and have to take away from those other things that you want to do outside of your home. So make sure it stays within about 25%. And that includes your principal, your interest, your property taxes, your home insurance, your mortgage insurance. All of that should stay within about 25% of your income.
25% of your income, folks. I wish someone told Darius and I this before we went and bought our first house. Granted, we could afford our first house, but it was expensive.
It was because that's what the lender told us that we could afford. And once we actually got in that house, it was
like, wait a second.
Yeah,
you gonna cut the grass this weekend because homie ain't gonna do it.
No, right.
but we say that jokingly because, jokingly and very seriously, because like we said, that the bank told us what we could afford, and we're like, yeah, that looks about right. And then we moved into our house, and then all of a sudden we were like, okay, we still need groceries, we still need furniture.
Exactly.
We need a bed in this joint. We need we gotta figure out this thing about grass. Are we mowing the grass, or is somebody gonna do it for us? We need mulch every spring. You need just everything that comes with a house. So what I would do is, before you buy your next house, is to go ahead and price it out. Price out everything. If you want to mow the grass, figure out how much lawn care is going to cost you every single week. Figure out how much groceries are going to cost you. Figure out what your commute cost might be in gas to and from, or electricity. Figure out what electricity could be like for that particular zip code. Figure out those averages and put it all together and figure out, does this make sense for you? And do you even want to spend that amount of money every single month?
Right.
Because I feel like we're drawn in our culture to buy a house as a sense of accomplishment. But just because you buy a house doesn't mean that you own the house, right? Because until you pay that mortgage off, whether it be 15 years or 30 years, you still don't own it. So we celebrate this thing called home ownership, but it's really smoke and mirrors, because you don't own the house. You're just renting from the bank. So decide, do you want to do traditional renting, where maybe you don't have to spend so much money, or do you want to rent from the bank? That's what really home ownership should be called, rent from the bank.
Yeah,
until you own that piece.
And I think you mentioned lawn care. It may be optional for some people, but if you have an HOA, it's not optional.
It ain't optional, because they're going to knock on your door and be like, who going to do this?
Or they're going to have a little letter on your mailbox in front of the whole neighborhood.
Flashbacks.
So that mulch every spring, that might be a necessity.
It's real.
And don't leave your trash can out too long. HOA gonna put a letter on your mailbox.
We're having fun here, but this is also a real thing because you have to determine, do you want to live in a neighborhood that has an HOA or not? And basically what HOA is, the purpose of HOA is a blessing, right? Because they want to make sure that the community is keeping kept, that people aren't doing crazy things or painting their houses yellow or keeping an unkept lawn, things of that nature. And our lawn wasn't unkept. We were just trying to figure out where we were going to buy a lawnmower or not. So it was a little high.
Yeah. Before we decided to, or before we didn't have a choice to. Anyways, the next point is to adjust your expenses according to the house that you want to afford, so that you can already get into the motion or the notion of, can I really afford this? How will my lifestyle adjust once I have this mortgage? Try to, as much as you can, mirror what you think your expenses are going to be before you actually get the mortgage. And if there's a difference in, let's say you're paying rent or you're staying at home, make sure you put that money aside for savings.
Yeah, exactly like I was alluding to before. Figure out all the costs and start paying those costs. Just put them to the side and figure out if it makes sense for you. And this is a really amazing exercise. It's going to take time for you to figure that out, but wouldn't you rather figure it out now before you actually have to make those payments?
Right.
So this is a real smart approach that I feel that people should start taking, especially young people, because again, our culture is go buy a house. Congratulations. This is amazing. But then it can become a burden if you aren't financially prepared for it. And that could send you into further financial distress if you're not prepared for it.
Yep. Now, point number 4 is kind of like a piggyback on the next point, on the first point, which is to start saving early. The reason why you want to start putting that income aside for savings for your mortgage, because you have to have a down payment. And ideally, you want to do about 20%. And it's that based on the average mortgage nowadays, that could be a pretty big penny. So you need to start saving as early as you possibly can, because it's not just the down payment. You also have closing costs, which is 3 to 7%, and move-in expenses from wherever you are now. So make sure you really start saving as early as you possibly can, so that you don't have these surprises that come up when you go to sign on the dotted line.
Yeah, because when you sign on the dotted line, it could just be like, okay, I see this fee, I see this fee, I see this fee. And then they go, where's the check? And you're like, wait a second, you need that today? So again, do your research, understand the costs that go into this home ownership, and make sure that you're ready and that you're committed for it. I can't tell you enough how many people get into home ownership and then end up selling their houses or become house broke, lose their marriages, lose this, lose that, again, because they weren't prepared. I hate to keep repeating this, but I just want to help protect the next person and get you in the right mindset and ready for home ownership. It can be an amazing, beautiful thing as long as you're prepared.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we feel like we have to do once we get to a certain point, but we have to do it responsibly. And the point of this video is to make sure that you do it responsibly, so that you're not in one of those situations like Carmen mentioned, where you have to sell your house, or the market goes up and you're like, oh, I'm going to make so much money, and you sell your house, but the market is going to continue to go up. Your house is going to continue to appreciate, hopefully, as long as you do the right thing for yourself and for your family.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, we have to recognize where we are in 2023. There's a lot of layoffs going on. So you have to consider, what is your income going to be like, and what are you going to be able to afford should you lose your job and you have this house? Yeah.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned that, because if you make sure you stick to your guns and your mortgage is only 25% of your income, it's a lot easier to save for the 25% of your income than it being 50% or 60%, something outrageous. Make sure you put yourself in the driver's seat for whatever may come in the future, because who has a crystal ball? We have no idea what's going to happen, but make sure that you have plans in place so that you can take care or make adjustments as needed.
And the other thing I would say that we didn't make a point of this video is, once you move into your house, now you should start saving money for the things that come up.
Yeah, air condition. Well, you'll have a warranty in the beginning, but air condition, plumbing,
the hole in the wall, unexpected,
hot water heater, Terminex to come through and make sure that you don't have termites or
mice, whatever the case may be.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, you have to understand these expenses. So then you're going to have to put aside at least an extra $200 a month, depending on how big your house is, for these incidentals, just to make sure that you have that covered should you need Terminex to come by. So again, take all of these things in consideration. Go ahead and start putting your chips aside and deciding whether or not homeownership is going to be good for you. And do not be pressured into doing something that doesn't make sense for you just because that's what everybody else is doing, right? Make sure that you own your own lifestyle, as we always say, and live the life of your financial dreams.
All right. Now here's the point number 5, and this is a big one. Pick the best mortgage for you. And that's pick a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. Now, I'm not going to tell you which one to pick because people are going to decide based on how they budget, but just listen to this. The average median household income in the United States in 2023, or as of doing this video, is about $428,000. Let's say round up to $430,000. That's the median home price. Now, let's say you put a down payment of 20% on that $430,000 house, which is about $86,000. That brings your mortgage to $344,000 that you either get a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. Now, also look this up. The average interest rate is about 6%. It's a little more than 6%, 6.87 for a 15-year mortgage, or 6.57 for a 30-year. But here's the thing. With a 15-year mortgage at 6%, the principal and interest, your mortgage is $2,903.87. Now here's how much interest you spend in that 15 years. $178,516. Sounds like a lot because you only did a mortgage for $344,000. You pay $178,000 in interest, which is on top of the $344,000 that you got a mortgage for a 15-year mortgage at 6%. Now, let's take the same interest rate for a 30-year mortgage. Your monthly payment is $2,062.45. And the interest you pay is $398,482.
In addition, over the 344.
Yes, over the 344 on a 30-year mortgage. So I understand that we also want to make sure that we live within the goals that we set for ourselves, but we also have to take in consideration the mortgages and how much we're willing to give up just in interest for somebody giving us access to those funds for our house.
I'm going to call that the interest, the fee for not being able to pay for it cash, right?
It is what it is.
Because that's what it is. So and I'm saying this because you have to go into that mindset, right? If I'm getting this mortgage, the bank is going to charge me a specific fee called interest because I cannot pay for this house outright. So you have to ask yourself, how much of that fee do you want to pay? In the 15-year mortgage example that Darius was saying, the fee or the interest is $178,000. You can buy a house just with that. Yeah. Right.
And if you do that same interest over 30 years, it's $398,000. It's more than double.
Yeah, that fee. So again, going back into this home ownership, we really got to be clear on the fees that are associated with this beautiful white picket fence that we want to have. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, it wouldn't be the Wealth Nation channel if we didn't talk about the numbers, if we didn't talk about the interest, and just being able to help you comprehend the implications that go into all of your financial decisions. Again, we're not saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. We're just giving you the facts, spilling the tea so that you can make the right decision for you.
Yeah. Now, the last point is very important, which is to stick to your goals, stick to your budget, stick to the plan that you set for yourself. Don't let the lender come in there and tell you that you can afford more house. Of course you can afford more house.
Or the agent, it's just $100 more.
Yeah, and it's just $15,000 more than what you budgeted for, but
it's only 30 minutes further, right? Think about those things, you know. And I'm talking about the real estate agent, because it's really easy to forget what were the must-haves that you needed because all of a sudden you love this particular house. Mm-hmm. But now it's 30 minutes further away. It's more inconvenient for you. And what does inconvenience mean? More money you have to spend getting to and from work that you weren't thinking about.
Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. You They say that you can afford it, but think about how much interest that you pay over this time frame. Think about how much interest you pay over this time frame and what you can do with, let's say, the difference between $398,000 and $178,000 just in interest. Now, I know some people may say it might be a tax write-off, but who wants to create that type of tax write-off when you can use that money for something else? That can be an investment to make more money.
I guarantee that tax write-off isn't going to be $390,000.
No,
so
no,
you're
it's
not
not
winning.
And get this, the interest is front-loaded on your mortgage, so they get their money up front, and the average person moves every 5 to 7 years. So if your interest is front-loaded, you go to move, you hadn't even paid a lot of money towards the principal. So how much money do you think you'll get when you go to sell that house if the economy is doing something weird at the time?
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that you said that. The average person moves every 5 to 7 years. This was another point that should be a part of the script, right? Is that you have to determine, if you're going to buy this house, are you committed to being in this area? Because if not, it doesn't make sense for you to buy a house, because like Darius said, all of your money is just going to go towards that fee, that interest, and you wouldn't have recouped any money. So again, determine, if you're going to buy a house, do I want to be here for at least 10 years? I'm going to challenge you to think that. Can I be right here in this neighborhood for 10 years before you even buy that house?
Yeah, it may make sense to rent.
Yeah, always.
Because if most of the money that you're putting on this house is towards interest anyway, the only difference between renting and buying a house, if you plan to move in 5 to 7 years, is the write-off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And side note, I know a lot of people are in the comments are going to be like, well, Carmen and Darius, what do you guys do? For us, we are very nomadic. So home ownership doesn't make sense for us because we are constantly moving. We do a lot of traveling. And it wasn't until we got okay with embracing our lifestyle where we stopped feeling bad for the fact that we didn't own a house, right? Can you say that?
We have investment property, but we don't live in, we rent where we live and own where we rent.
Yeah.
Out.
Yeah. That's a mouthful. So the idea is, again, being honest with yourself, because I have to say that for me, when people said, oh, where do you live? Do you own whatnot? Like, there was a little bit of like regret, like, man, maybe we should own a home. But then I was like, no, that doesn't make sense for us. And again, it's not until you embrace your lifestyle and what it is that you actually want, where you're not going to care what everyone else is doing or how they're spending their money. So that's why we go back to the ownership piece of your lifestyle.
Right. So before you buy your next house or your first house, make sure you have a stable income. 2, decide what you can afford. 3, adjust your expenses so that you can pretend that you already have this mortgage. 4, start saving early as you possibly can. 5, pick the best mortgage for you, whether it be a 15-year or 30-year. Go for the one where you pay less interest. 6, stick to your plan. Stick to your budget. And don't make any adjustments just because they tell you that you can afford more. If you stay within the 25%, of course, they're going to tell you that you can afford more. Don't go for the bait.
Yeah. And I'm going to add point number 7. Do not compromise. Don't compromise on your budget, and don't compromise on the things that you say you want, because you have to live in this house and you are the one that has to make the payments. Once the mortgage broker is done, once the agent is done, they ain't got to live in it or make the payments. So do not compromise on what it is that you say that you want.
Right. Now, if you want more information on budget, maybe the 50-30-20 rule, which Carmen and I use, check out our next video where we talk about how we manage our finances.
And don't forget to own your own lifestyle,
or someone else will.